Welcome to The Natural You. This is number 4 in the highlights from season 1 and 2. This week is an animal theme. We've got 2 nature conservationists and a veterinary student. We'll be kicking off with Charles Hall talking about rare breed antelope in southern Africa and the paradox between hunting and conservation. Following that, we'll have Ross Wanless, who is an expert in seabirds and fisheries and how his work has helped save hundreds of thousands of birds like albatross. Then we'll finish off with Robyn, who is a veterinary student, and she's going to talk about her connection to animals and how she finds balance in her life.
The species that we refer to as high-value species are basically animals that have a high value when it comes to selling them, and they have a high value because of their scarcity factor. So they aren't as scarce as they used to be because of the various breeding programs throughout South Africa. But the species we generally speak about are sable antelope, roan antelope, and the Cape buffalo. So those are the 3 that we deal with. There are others like rhino, Sesame. We have a few Sesame as well. But we basically breed them to increase numbers. And then once we have enough to sell, they're actually used to repopulate areas where they once roamed. And also to repopulate game reserves where they didn't necessarily roam, but where the owners of the reserves would love to have them. These 3 species are quite popular, and basically the price is pretty much being determined by what the hunting value is. Whereas in the past, the value was determined by scarcity, and female animals were just hugely lucrative. Whereas now the male animals are more lucrative because they are more sought after in the hunting industry.
Is that for sort of more the trophies and the horns?
Yeah, and that's where the value lies. I wouldn't be hesitant at all to say that an animal that gets hunted in its natural setting, in most cases dies quickly, suffers less than an animal that gets transported to an abattoir and has to go through all that stress before it dies to fill our tummies, So
yeah,
people don't always think of that. I also think that a lot of the younger generation don't understand hunting and how critical it is to manage populations, and how critical it is to add value, because unfortunately, whether we like it or not, if a species has no value, it's not going to survive. It will fall by the wayside, and that's the beginning and the end of it all.
So if it has no value, if it has no monetary value, it's not valued.
Exactly.
And we see that right across ecological arguments. It's like, well, how much is clean air worth? How much is a unpolluted river worth? There's no monetary value attached to it. At least here we can say, hey, this animal is worth X amount, and so it's quite tangible to people.
I wasn't a big hunter, and I would say still I'm not a big hunter. I'm a conservationist, and I was forced to understand that hunting forms a critical part in game management in Africa and in the rest of the world. But where the secret lies for mankind in general is education. And I think I'm starting to appreciate that more and more. And I'm becoming more and more involved in actually educating not only the younger generation, mainly the younger generation, but also some older folk. We need to show that we care. So what I mean by that is environmentally, and we need to show that we care for each other. And the easiest and the quickest way to do that is to teach people how to care for the environment, and then a natural flow from that is how to care for each other.
Oh, that's beautiful. So by caring for the environment, it's the natural thing that flows from that is to care for each other.
Yeah, there is no ways that we're really going to care for each other if we don't care for our natural environment. Because if we don't have that, everyone else is going to be running around in circles just trying to survive in 100 years' time.
We care for each other by caring for the environment.
I just always loved nature. right from the get-go. As a kid, I was always fascinated by it. I did this weird thing, started watching birds, and no one else in my family knew what I was doing or why, but I just had this innate need to see these things, appreciate them, to try and record, have I seen that before? And that's sort of played out throughout my life, is this deep connection that I have with nature and wanting to understand it. And that combined with my, I guess, natural curiosity, really just loved learning about nature, how it works, how it all fits together, why do certain things happen and not in another way. It turned out that there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of albatrosses being killed in these fisheries around the world. So that was my entry into fisheries and seabirds. As I said earlier, I was interested in birds, and this was suddenly like, oh, wow, there's this whole world out there. The high seas, it's huge.
High seas.
The animals are wild. There are no other boats. That's also pretty wild. So it was, it was just, I can't believe this world exists. So I suddenly found a way into this world, and it bit, and I have never looked back. Since then, I've been seabirds and bycatch and fisheries, and this is where, these are amazing animals that we're talking about. The fish that people are catching are equally amazing. They're astonishing. And I love fish, and I don't mind eating fish. And it saddens me to see the way fisheries are mismanaged and allowed to collapse. And I don't want that, because actually fish are super healthy. All those omegas, they're incredibly robust systems that can withstand incredible pressure and still bounce back. So they're really ideal for sustainability. And health-wise, there's very little better than a healthy fish.
How do you keep your positivity? You're super positive. How do you just not just go, crumbs, how are we ever going to make an impact?
Well, if you have an attitude like that, you're never going to last in this game. The only way to last in this game is to be there and to recognize that these are the rules. And if you don't like the rules, you can try and change them. But railing against them is not going to help. It's not going to get you anywhere. There will not be progress. And so if you want progress, you've got two choices. You can change the rules and you can work within them. And so that's what I do. I work within them, and I accept that it's difficult. It's hard. The bar that is set for achieving change is incredibly high, and yet we do that. So I have devoted my career to meeting that bar and driving change, despite the incredible obstacles we have. It turns out they were killing tens of thousands of birds every year, just in South Africa. But through that process of onboard work, working with the industry, not setting yourself up in opposition to them, but saying, hey, look, this is a problem. You can't be killing 10, 20,000 albatrosses a year and say you don't have a problem. So, but we want to work with you. We want to try and find solutions. And we were able to do that in the albatross task force very effectively. And that trawl fishery, for example, we published a paper in 2014, which showed that actually there was incredibly widespread adoption of the mitigation measures that we were promoting. And essentially it reduced the annual catch of birds from 10,000 birds a year to fewer than 100. So we had a 99% reduction in the bycatch. It's basically ended it.
You're a super upbeat guy, but are you hopeful? You're hopeful? Because sometimes I just look at it and I go, it's all going to fucking hell in a handbasket. It's going tits up, and there's nothing we can do. So just bugger it all and just carry on. But no,
there's definitely none of that in me. I do get frustrated and I do get sad when I see things do fall apart. But it's never too late. There's always a reason to be there. And one of the lessons that I've learned, one of the truths that I've intuited is, if you're not in the game, if you are not there holding the line, you're guaranteed there will be no progress. You're guaranteed things will be worse. So even if your presence there is just maintaining the status quo, as terrible as it may be, at least it's not worse, which it would be if you weren't there. So a very powerful lesson is being in the game is in itself and in its own right an important thing. You've got to be there.
It was an eco school. We did lots of things in nature. Our school was, well, its second location after moving from a house to an actual more formal setting was next to a wetland.
Oh, wow.
And so for as long as I could remember, every year, maybe more than once a year, we would clean up the wetland. And I remember there was just a random bathtub in the wetland. And we weren't too sure whether to take it out or leave it because there was actually a whole new habitat growing inside that bath. I can't remember what we actually did with it, but yeah, so we would clean up the wetland, take all the rubbish out, and then remove any alien plants. So we would do that because, it was on our doorstep. We did beach cleanups all the time. So we were outdoors a lot. The only times we were indoors was actually for class.
And so that sounds like a real a responsibility and a stewardship of nature, taking really interactive and cleaning up mess and taking out the alien species and just engaging and in a very protective way, which sounds amazing.
Yeah, and it was really educational as well because I feel like a lot of people now that I'm meeting, they actually aren't even aware that you get alien plants or, obviously everyone knows about litter, but yeah, we were educated from quite a young age on things that are now just general knowledge to us.
And now that you're on the sort of the veterinary school campus, there's obviously lots more space, and I'm presuming animals and other kind of livestock and things like that. And what's so different about that now?
The biggest thing for me is having grass under my feet that I can go walk barefoot. And then obviously we have the animals. We've got horses, which is obviously my passion. But then we've got cows, we've got sheep, we have pigs, goats, we've got beagles, all sorts of animals. And you can go to them whenever and you can have that touch with them, which is what I love, and to just be quiet together, but so much is said between that. I think that would be my favorite thing. One of my core values in life is just balance in every regard, with regards to what I eat, how much I work, how much I don't work, how much time I spend outdoors, indoors, sleeping, all of that. Everything is just about balance for me. So that's what I do. I make sure I have time for work and to learn, to be intellectual. And then I also make time to be outdoors. And then sometimes I can do them both. Like I have a study group where we've now changed locations from being inside our rooms to being outdoors where we can hear the birds, be able to sit on the grass. And it's a really nice setting.
And I wonder, I think I've read that can be, that kind of extra stimulation can obviously calm the nervous system, and in that more parasympathetic state, we can perhaps absorb more information. So really enhancing that learning.
Yeah, no, I've definitely felt a difference just to be able to absorb information for longer periods of time, and to just be more at peace with what you're doing.
Yeah, and mini breaks. When we learn something, we take a short little break. Actually, from what I understand now, the neuroscience is saying that actually helps embed the knowledge. So you learn this thing, you take, like, even if it's 10, 20, 30 seconds to listen to the birds, there's a focus away from the actual material. And in that time of doing nothing, let's say, there's allowing the brain to actually process and embed that information.
Yeah, no, definitely.
What, in your opinion, is something that is considered normal, in italics, but that is not healthy or congruent with natural health? What's something perhaps you or your friends would engage with as a normal activity? So for for some of my friends might be, having a glass of wine every night is totally normal, or half one. And we know that certainly might be normal, but it's definitely not healthy. What is there anything that when I say those words grab you?
So I don't personally do it because I know how it doesn't benefit myself. But for me, especially living with students, is just how quickly, when you're running out of time in your day, people will drop their hours of sleep. I do not thrive on anything less than 7.5 hours. So I get my 7.5, 8 hours almost every night. And I believe that's why I'm able to function and to just get through my studies. I just see people pulling all-nighters, getting 2 hours of sleep, and I can literally see the effects it has on them.
So the natural state is it has to have good duration and quality of sleep. Thanks for listening. That was number 4 in the highlights from seasons 1 and 2. If you want to listen to the full episodes of either Charles, Ross, or Robyn, their links are in the show notes. In the next episode, we'll have another 3 guests sharing their passion and insight into what connects them to nature.